My name is Anita Allgood. I have the pleasure of serving as the VP of Single Family and Homeownership Services for Invest Atlanta. So what I'm here to speak to you about today is the relaunch of our Anti-Displacement Tax Relief Fund program. This is a program that was originally launched last year, but we launched it in several pilot area neighborhoods. This year, it is relaunching citywide. Is there a clicker? Are you going to do it for me? Okay, awesome. And so ultimately, the reason that this program was created, the great work that Invest Atlanta does, you all are familiar with Invest Atlanta, the Economic Development Authority for the City of Atlanta. Much of the work that we do has unintended consequences like increased property taxes, which is challenging for our most vulnerable. And so what this program does, it will pay the increase of the eligible applicants' taxes from their base year for the next 20 years, right? So really, really good stuff. And obviously, to help with the displacement that is happening for property tax increase. And so ultimately, this was a from the Centennial Yards Housing Trust Fund. Just a little background about Centennial Yards. I'm sure you all know about the Centennial Yards project. This was a fund that the developer paid monies into for affordable housing. And so there was a $10 million carve out for this project. So again, the application opens citywide. It is actually open. We launched on May 1st. That application will be open through May 31st, okay? We will take in 245 new applicants this year across all of the counties, and that is just a function of the remaining money that we have left. So we want those funds that we have left to be able to serve the applicants that we put in the program for the next 20 years without having to do any additional fundraising. When we do additional fundraising, we will reopen the application to take in new applicants. And so those applicants will be chosen randomly, and they will be in the program as long as they continue to qualify. They'll need to recertify every year that their income is the same, that they still live in that home, those type of things. And then we'll pay that increase on their behalf. And then lastly, if an applicant is currently in an appeal with the tax office, they are ineligible because we need to understand what the tax is so we know what to pay, right? So if they're currently in appeal, they're ineligible for the program. Next slide.
Does freeze equal appeal?
Does freeze equal?
If it's freeze, you're appealing through your freeze. Is that?
If,
Oh, sorry. So sorry.
oh, no worries, no worries. Okay, so you'll see the eligibility criteria here. The applicant must be at least 60 years old, and they've got to have lived in their home since 2015. We wanted to certainly give those legacy residents first shot at getting into the program. They must have the city and the county homestead exemption, right? If we're going to be paying for a tax liability, we want them to have done the work to reduce that liability to the greatest degree possible. So they need their homestead exemptions. And we are at 60% of the area median income and below based on the household. And then they just need to provide proof of ownership and really have no negative liens attached to the property. So if they've got mechanics liens or FIFAs or things like that, that will render them ineligible for the program as well. Okay, next slide. All right, and just so you understand where the 60% area median income per household is, starting at $48,000 for one person, going up to 8 folks. We know that in many cases, seniors are having their grandchildren, their children, grandchildren living with them. So that will increase that, the income level. And these are the 2025 limits. They came out in April, so they have been updated. Excellent. Okay, so what we are going to ask then is just essentially to prove their identity. They need a license, a passport, or a valid state ID. We need proof of their residency, so a utility bill or a mortgage statement will do that. And then we need verification of their income. So if they're still working, pay stubs, W-2s, Social Security, or pension, any type of government benefit that they may receive. Slide. Okay, and this is what that process will look like. And so again, that application is open through May 31st. We will do a random selection. Again, we already have over 300 applications, and we are midway through the month. So again, we will only be able to select 245. So we will do a random selection, and we will ultimately publicize that selection utilizing the application ID. We won't use any identifying PII when identifying those folks. When they apply, they will get a specific application ID. And as we make those selections, they will be based on the application ID. We will send that list of names to the Fulton County Commissioner's Office, and they will tell us this was their 2024 tax number. This is their 2025 tax number. This is the difference. Okay. They will send us back that information, that spreadsheet back to us, and then we will make a payment directly to Fulton County for that amount. So those funds don't touch the applicant's hands in any way. The funds go directly from Invest Atlanta to the tax office. And then when the bills come out, that will show as a payment on the bill, and the homeowner is simply responsible for the balance. Okay. And then we will send out a letter to those applicants, those awardees, saying that we have paid X number of dollars on your behalf. That number will match the payment that is on their tax bill as well, so that they can kind of corroborate that information. Next slide. Okay, so Invest Atlanta has partnered with Forward. Forward is a technology company. They serve as our program manager for this program. They have enlisted the assistance of 3 community-based organizations to assist with in-person applications. That application is an electronic application. We know that some seniors are not technologically inclined. So these community-based organizations will be assisting people with in-person applications throughout the month. So Meals on Wheels, Rebuilding Together, Nehemiah Project. I know that Rebuilding Together is doing sessions at the Fulton County Library, Adamsville, Collier Heights branch every Wednesday from 10 to 3. Each one of them have their own timeframes, but this is how folks that need assistance putting that application in, how they can get it, okay, throughout the month. Okay. And I've already introduced myself. My colleague that works with me on this program is Marquita Key. She is my anti-displacement manager, and these are our points of contact at Forward. Again, they serve as our program manager to help us implement and facilitate the work for this program. And I think that's it. Questions? That's it.
Good morning. I'll just be a little tardy. I heard you say that if a senior is currently appealing their tax assessment, that will make them ineligible for the program. So my question is that I live on the south side, and southwest is where I live, and southeast. We are noticing that our tax bill, I'm still younger, gainfully employed, so it's different for me. But a lot of my neighbors, I live in a very senior neighborhood. Tax bills tripling after 1 year. And so that puts them at a disadvantage because we know, or I should say, we suspect the values have been devalued on our side of town for so long. And now they're trying to put them where they're supposed to be. And so you get huge increases in your tax bill. So if they need the revenue, I feel like they're not having to choose between the program and making sure that their property taxes are being assessed properly. So is there not any way to account for that, or do you just have to wait till the next
They
time?
have to wait till the next time. That appeal has to be done and in place, right? Because in order for us to effectively run the program, we have to understand what's the tax were, what the taxes are.
That's making a hard decision for my neighbors. Just wanna-
I do understand it. I do understand. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Pursuant to what he just said, there's typically, we appear in the BLE, there's a freeze for 3 years based on appearing. Is that freeze also considered an appeal?
That's not, because then the tax has been
It's
assessed,
been adjudication.
right? We understand what it is, we understand what we need to pay, right?
Okay.
I got that.
And did I hear you say 245 or 275?
245 is the number we'll put into the program this year.
Okay, and I think I got you. That was the most important question. Thank you.
Ms. Phillips.
Good morning, thank you for presentations. I am a Wills and States administrator for a law firm. Is it possible to get a copy of the contract that the seniors will need to sign? And the reason, there is no contract. The reason I'm asking is because in my APB, we do still have seniors who husband and wife. And if one should die, typically we file for your support for the other. It takes Fulton County, unfortunately, a pretty good while to get that completed. And I would need to know how to maneuver that while if we get them to sign up for this program. So
Yes, ma'am. What the program manager will ask for, because we have had that scenario, we want to make sure that we're not, disenfranchising anyone. And we know that back in the day, in many cases, the home is in the husband's name, and the wife was never on it. And so if they can provide an marriage certificate, okay, we'll take that, with the assumption that they lived in that home in their custody. We also are using this year an heirship affidavit. Okay, that can be utilized. That's something that is new this year for scenarios just like that, because we want to get as many people into the program when we know those situations exist. Is that helpful?
that's very so.
Okay.
And so if any other questions surrounding anything as it relates to their estates, do I contact Miss
So Hayward, okay, it's okay. Yep. And anyone that, their email address is under that page as well, and I can get you directly to them.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Sears?
Is the enrollment thing. Thanks for the presentation. One of my neighbors had told me I need to tell all of the neighbors about this, and at the time I didn't know what it was. I was like, okay, you want me to go yell out? I don't know what it is. So this is very valuable for me. Is the application period window annual, or is that how?
It is not, simply because of the amount of funding that we have available, right? So the 245 that we'll put into the program this year will expend the funding that we have available over the next 20 years. I am very adamant that I will not put more people into the program that we have funding to serve, right? So what we have available will serve 245 for the next 20 years. My program manager has created a projection tool for me, because we put 105 people into the program last year. Obviously, we'll have to pay their increase this year, plus the 245 that we'll put into the program this year. But I have a projection tool that says you have this amount of money. This money will last you 20 years. The max number of people is 245. And so in order for us to reopen this application, we will have to fundraise. I can't tell you when, how much. So it is very important that people apply this year, right? So that they at least have a chance at the random selection. Okay. I mean, last year we were putting, I think we said 200, we only got 130 applications. So all of the eligible candidates got into the program last year. That obviously will not be the case this year because we're already over 245 applicants.
Mr. Martin?
I was under the impression that the floating exemption was intended to prevent exactly the situation that Virginia described. Is that not the case, or is it tailoring something?
I don't know what the floating exemption.
Oh, it's that cap of 3% rise in your property taxes by adjusting your homestead exemption to knock it down again?
Yeah, I'm sure it will work, but it's temporary. It's temporary. It's not going to last for 20 years like the program, right? So the cap is,
Well, but he was talking about a 300% increase, and the floating exemption is intended to cap that at like 3%. And so I'm wondering why the discrepancy.
I didn't say a number, I just know that I said sometimes it's tripling. Because I didn't.
So I didn't know how the floating exemption was failing in the case of the situation you're describing.
Is that floating exemption just for seniors?
It's for everybody, but it's only for city and county. So, I mean.
I don't know,
Okay.
I have all my exemptions I can use.
Mr. Hunter?
I have one more question. Is this program part of the legacy that program that happened? I think it was a presentation a few years ago that was given to us when Tyler Perry started the residents in and around his studio.
it is a part of that. And so there's some background. Tyler Perry, understanding that the presence of his studio had an impact in taxes, an increase in taxes for people in his community, he made a donation. That original donation was $750,000, which we donated to Investment to manage that program, but paid the back taxes for seniors in the city of Atlanta. Okay, so that was the first infusion of funding for him. He also committed another $2 million excuse me, to this tax refund program that we're administering now. So 500,000 over 4 years will be used. And so the way that the program works, we will identify, we have 7 neighborhoods around Tyler Perry Studios that have been identified. And so the folks that get into the program in his footprint will be paid with his funding. The folks outside of his footprint will be paid by the Centennial Yards funding.
Thank you. One last question. Mr. Burnett has his hand up.
What an exciting program. I love this. Recognizing you are not a tax accountant. Kind of a random question though, does the award amount, does that have to be calculated as a part of annual income for the award recipients?
No.
Okay.
Okay, let me make sure I understand what you're asking. With an amount that we pay going to be reflected as income.
Great.
No, we've just paid for a portion of the bill on their behalf. We're not submitting any 1099s or anything for that one.
Your name again?
Anita, all good.
It's all good. I heard you say no negative liens. Some folks are under a 10-year or the 20-year program through Invest Atlanta for repairs.
Yes.
Is
That is
that
not a negative.
okay? So some liens, but no negative.
Negative liens would be like a FIFA or a mechanic's lien.
Gotcha.
So you had some work done on your house and you didn't pay the GC. They put a mechanic's lien on your home. That would be a negative lien.
Gotcha.
Is there any aspect of the program that, say you have a senior that qualifies under all of the other regulations, but they have a tax lien, a 5A for the tax lien, and it's a small amount? Would that totally disqualify that applicant, or would you all refer that applicant to maybe some organization that could pay that lien off for them?
We would do both. It would both would happen. If that 5K is present at the time of application, they will not qualify. But ultimately, we would have that information and we would refer them over to the only entity that I know that is currently doing that is the Office of Constituent Services. Had a program where they were paying back taxes, right? And so we would do essentially both.
Mr.
I just would like her to define or clarify 5A. I'm not familiar.
A 5A of fear of fights, just it's one of those crazy legal terms. And it's just really a lien against the property, right? And so we know mortgages represent a lien against the property. Our invested lands with down payment assistance and owner occupied rehab programs, it's a lien against the property. Those are not negative. A person is paying their mortgage. Our liens don't have any payments associated with it. But, a 5A is something that is negative, that it has placed a lien against your property. And
Sanitation, I think there's some sanitation, there's a servicer that has taxes that's holding, and you're going in there and you're paying them, and their name escapes me.
you're talking about investing?
It could be Investa, where they hold some of the.
Well,
What's that?
well, Fulton County tax assessors,
Mhm.
it will sell delinquent taxes to an organization called Investa. Okay, Investa Services.
Okay.
And, Investa handles it in various ways. Obviously, it represents a payment that needs to be made now to Investa. It allows Fulton County to kind of keep their books clean and say, we don't have any delinquent taxes.
Right.
They're not delinquent because Investa paid for them, right? But the homeowner still owes that tax payment to Investa.
And they're paying them. So I know that the taxpayers are paying Investa. My question would be, is that a negative?
But if Investa has placed a lien against the property, it could be, right? If they can show that they have a payment plan in place.
Then that doesn't show up as a, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I just want to add to that. So in the state of Atlanta, the tax commission collects, of course, our property taxes, but also E9. E9 one in the trash. And if you don't pay them or it happens to get your mortgage, because it's built separately, they don't pick it up. And if you're not paying attention, then it will then be sold to investor potentially. And then that could be then you will find out, they'll be sending you all kinds of emails, letters. And then, you'll get that fixed. So that could be a negative impact. So pretty much anything that the tax commission collects, it could be, if you don't pay it, a negative lien on your property.
And I think what what I heard, and please correct me, is that if that does occur, however, a payment plan is established with Investor Services, then that means that it's possibly reflecting as a negative.
It couldn't, it's possible that it couldn't be, right? So depending on how quickly Investa, may place a lien against the property. I mean, I don't know, or at what point they will do that, right? It could be that they have reached out to the person, to your emails and letters, trying to say, hey, you owe us this. At some point, when they're not getting a response, that could turn into it.
But to the positive, I want to go to the positive.
Yes, ma'am.
You got the person that is on a
Yes.
payment plan. So it sounds as if they've established
On a
something,
payment plan.
then that would not necessarily be reflecting. And so how would they find out
How would they find
if
that?
it's a negative reflection? Is it appearing as a lien, or is that something that?
I don't know. I mean, that's something that, I don't know how it's going to appear.
Okay.
Mhm. I don't know. Yes.
Does a contractor's lien need to be perfected in order to count it as a negative?
If it's a lien against the property, we're gonna have to.
I mean, because if you count unperfected liens, then you're sort
What
of,
do you mean by unperfected? I'm sorry.
a contractor can place a temporary lien on your property, but he has to perfect it in court or it goes away, just about.
Mhm.
I had this happen.
Mhm.
And if you require people to clear unperfected liens, then you're essentially subsidizing home improvement fraud.
Okay.
And
Well,
I didn't know. if
Well,
you
what's,
made that
we're
distinction.
not going to require them to clear the lien. If there's a negative lien against the property, when the program manager checks, that person is going to be denied entry into the program.
Well, then that's what I mean. That if there's benefit to being in the program, and there is a contractor, an unprotected contractor in my house that will turn into a pumpkin if I just sit around and do nothing, I am obliged to deal with that contractor in order to get admission to the program.
Well, they would simply have to wait until the next summer program.
Tim, I think what she's saying,
Like this last question, one.
I think what she's saying is until it's proven or appears as a negative lien, I get what you're saying, protected and unprotected. It's the bottom line is whatever the examination of that filing is, if it's determined to be negative, then they're gonna be precluded. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
Yeah,
That's
Thank you, Ms. Algood, so much for the presentation. Quick question, you mentioned that you already have over 245 applications. Do you know how many you have at this point?
Correct. As of yesterday, it was 305. 305.
So then I guess the request to extend that application deadline.
Yeah, we would not do that.
Okay.
Well, and the reason why the timing is mission critical is because we have worked with the Fulton County Commissioner's Office to ensure that our process is done prior to the bill going out. So what we want is to ensure that our payment is made and is showing as a payment on the bill. So the homeowner, and i.e. Lender, in the case that there's a mortgage on that property, the lender is paying those taxes, they're only paying what is required, right? So we worked with them, they need this process done prior to the bill going out. We don't want to hold them up. So this is why the timeline is.
And can you say a little bit more about the random selection process?
Yes, I mean, it is, again, our program manager is a technology-based company. And so that random selection will be done via technology. We won't be making any selections, and it is random across all 12 council districts. We know that 6, 7, and 8 will very likely not have applicants that can qualify. And so the number of applicants that would have been allowed in 6, 7, and 8 will be dispersed amongst the rest of the city applications.
Thank you so much. And just as a note, when Ms. Walker was talking about the funding at Perry Studios, I just want to give a shout out to the Fort Mac LRA Community Engagement Subcommittee, and very specifically Open Cities Judy Walker, because that discussion was had during one of those committees, to make sure that the seniors' taxes were addressed and that help was established. And as of the result with that meeting with Mr. Perry, that is how that funding came into place. And so now we have this legacy program. And so I just really want to really acknowledge that and show that as a demonstration of what you all's input can really mean for the city.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
All right, Mr. LaRue, Department of City Planning report. Alrighty. Mr. Hunter,
We need to make a motion, to approve the agenda.
we don't have one.
You still on the phone?
You do now.
Yeah.
Who's in it? Am I coming up? Okay. Take those words for it. All right, I will, Ms. Garcia has had to move her presentation to next month, so I'm asking for a motion to accept the agenda, removing the Showcase Atlanta, presentation.
So moved, Commissioner.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. That's very,
Second.
that's,
Second.
thank you. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Any objections? All right, the agenda is approved by unanimous consent. We can move on to the voting report from April 19th, 2025. Right, so, officially, the meeting is called to order at 10:36 a.m. with a quorum of 14. Moving on to the voting report. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the label. Is there a second?
A second.
Mr. Thurman, any questions or discussion on the motion? Any objections? All right, motion approved by unanimous consent. Thank you. Ms. Lou.
Yes. So lots of fun things happening in DCP world. Starting with our FY 26 budget presentation will happen on Tuesday, May 20th. That's this coming Tuesday, May 20th at 1:00 p.m. in the old council chamber. And of course, all the budget hearings are open to the public and stream on Channel 26 and on the city's website and social media platforms as well for those that care to watch. Our budget, at the request of the Quality of Life Committee, we were asked to provide some details on the budget, and I will happily do so as soon as I can pull it back up. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Our FY 24 year closed out with 27.8 million. And then FY 25, we adopted a budget of 26.5 million. I'm rounding, of course. Our FY 25 year is projected to close at 32.5 million. So we're significantly over budget by the end of FY 25, mostly due to personnel costs. And then our FY 26 proposed budget is 26.9. So 26,918,000. And that's that on that. We have the planning initiatives webinar coming up May 28th. My sincerest apologies for the social and the email that went out. I hadn't seen it until I received it like y'all, so I didn't know that it was going out without any sort of explanation or description of the topics to be covered. But the planning initiatives webinar will build on a conversation that actually originated here around coordinating our plans, our citywide plans. So there will be a discussion featuring representation from director level representation from ATL, DOT, Parks and Rec, and Planning to talk about the coordination of all these citywide plans in the first probably 45 minutes to an hour. And then the same as the last one, we'll do Q&A from everybody for the second part. The one different thing this go round from the first planning initiatives webinar is that the first one we did 2 dates. We did it on Thursday and Saturday. And I think I mentioned to y'all back then that this is because it was on such short notice and you had the big four items appearing on your agenda and not a whole lot of time to dig into it. So we offered it twice so that those that couldn't attend on Thursday would be able to hopefully attend on Saturday. This go round, because we got the word out in enough time, there's only one happening and it's on the 28th, Wednesday, the 28th at 6:00 p.m. So we'll put some more info out about that. As for Plan A, thank you for those that have already voted to support Plan A. We are really, really pleased to report that out of the 14 interviews that have voted thus far on Plan A, all 14 of them have voted to support Plan A. And we are not anticipating issues from the remaining 11
there may or may not be support from the remaining 11, but because this go round, DCP has really made itself available. Shout out to Nate, Joselle, and Catherine, and Doug Young, who leads that team, and Monique. But they really have gone above and beyond to make sure that we're available to take questions and to provide support to all of the MPUs that need help. And we have policies from 12 MPUs. So definitely wanting to see more of that, more of the policies coming in, if that is possible, from those MPUs that have not yet submitted them. That means 13 have not submitted and 12 have. And I think that's it for me.
Yes, the deadline extension for the
That's nice
policies.
of me. Say that
The
again.
deadline extension for submitting the policies.
It's still May 30th to my understanding, but yeah. That's my understanding. But I would suggest that the MPUs that have not submitted policies is not because they need time, it's because they need help. And so that team is willing to help, remains willing to help. The only other thing is that the Urban Plan Academy is in your planners reports for this month. If you have not taken Urban Plan Academy and you're interested in doing so, I know some people have more understanding of neighborhood development concepts than others, but if you suspect that you could benefit from a program like that, a course like that, I highly encourage you to take it, because I don't know whether we will have funding for it next year. So as far as I know, you know, hoping for the best and planning for the worst, this could be the last cohort of Urban Plan Academy. So
That's a Lego one?
mhm,
Oh, that's fun.
it is so much fun.
Can you make it more than once?
You cannot.
Oh.
You cannot. It is a lot of fun, a great exercise. And that's so much fun that we are adapting a version of it for our civic responsibility for young leaders cohort that will be here in just 2 weeks. The last part of my update is that I'm very proud of the work that our team did to ensure equitable outreach across the city. The last time I reported on this, we were in dire need of applicants from Carver and one other that I can't think of right now.
Jackson.
Pardon me? Maynard Jackson, yes, thank you. Carver and Maynard Jackson. Thank you, Ms. Lee Furlong. And we had an overrepresentation from North Atlanta and Midtown High School. And I'm real proud to say that we were able to get applicants from all the schools, and we sent out the acceptance letters last week, and the students are so very excited. We're excited too. That program begins June 9th and runs through the 13th, and all of you will be invited to their mock council meeting. For those that don't have anything to do on a Friday, it is the highlight of the week. The students take it very seriously. The council president role is served by your member, Rasheen Hunter, who does a really great job as the council president. And it's just a lot of fun watching them introduce legislation that they wrote to address problems that they themselves identified, and they debate the legislation in a way that should make their parents and their community really proud. So
Can you repeat the date?
June 13th, Friday, June 13th. I think it's 2 o'clock. I'll send y'all an email to let you know. Is it not 2?
No, I was gonna say it'd be cool if they can participate.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna, that was my next question.
Public comment.
Did you take the comment below? So just to quickly tell you all how it goes.
It is in council chamber.
It's in it's supposed to be in the council chamber, but we're still uncertain as to whether that room will be available to us. So it may be in the old council chamber, but I'll let you all know as soon as we have that finalized. The students on Monday received their assignment. They are broken up into groups of 6, I believe, 5 groups of 6. And they self-select their topics in advance during the application process. So we group them by areas of interest. there would be a food systems group, there'd be a transportation group, a housing affordability group, et cetera. And they, you know, find their groove. They talk about problems in that area, in that subject, along that subject, and then they do research to see how other cities have solved that problem, how Atlanta may have attempted to solve that problem, et cetera. And then they talk about legislative solutions. They work all week long writing legislation and playing around with it, debating it, trying to debunk different ideas amongst their groups. And then on Friday, they introduce their legislation. One member of the group, two members of the group are council members. One member of the group is a city staff person that's serving as a subject matter expert. One member of the group is supporting the legislation, and one member is opposing the legislation as members of the public. So they speak during public comment to either support or oppose the legislation. I realize that's 5 people, so I think it's 6 groups of 5, not 5 groups of 6. But yeah, we could definitely take some more public comment to rile them up a little bit, throw them off a little bit. It's a lot. How do I know if I'm taking a cohort? Send us an email and you
Did you play with Legos?
no.
They did.
Oh, yeah. It's Lego with the trigger, Jenny? Yeah.
Well, you would remember it.
You would definitely remember, yeah. 25 is the max. It is not randomly selected, unlike the Atlanta program. It is carefully selected by hand. I think the date is the 24th. I think possibly May 24th. Is the application? Make sure I'm right about that. The application. Oh no, it's not May 24th. It is. Sorry.
And our application's still open.
Yes, the application is still open. Oh, I could have just looked on the website to see what the date is instead of trying to find my calendar.
While she's looking for that, are there any other questions for Leah? Mr. Hessler?
At the Community Development Human Services Committee this week, there was a substitute visual protection ordinance.
Yes.
I know there has been, it was one of the key initiatives that has gone through the process. There was no additional material provided. I'm just curious if DCP is working on a fact sheet or explainer or circulating the substitute through, maybe not through the official process, but at least sort of notification to folks. And if you happen to know, because I think the commissioner tried to give some summary of what was changed, it would just be very, very helpful, since it obviously is a long discussed and debated piece of legislation that there is a sense of urgency and across the board.
Yeah.
Something to.
So I thank you for bringing that up, because I did mean to mention that myself. There will be a very, very brief update at the beginning of the webinar, the Planning Initiatives webinar. Very brief, just to say, you know, we started with the big 4. Here's where those are right now. And moving into today's content, here we are. There will be some sort of explainer piece that outlines the amendments that are proposed and what prompted it. Most of the, contrary to what it appears to be, most of the feedback that prompted an amendment actually came from the webinar or the MPUs, almost all of it. There were a few that came from the tree advocates, whatever those groups are, the different advocacy groups, but most of it was resoundingly heard at either MPU meetings or the webinar. So we did actually draft that. Here's what we heard, here's what we're proposing. I don't know that it's ready for public consumption yet, but they're working on it. And I'll make sure to mention that people are waiting on it, or that APAB asked about it. The party house legislation passed already. Short-term rental, I don't even have an update on that. I don't even know what to tell you about short-term rental ordinance, except that it has not completed its legislative cycle, nor has the TPO.
And the Urban Plan Academy is June 28th. I was way off, sorry. Saturday, June 28th.
Yeah, Leah, you indicated that DCP are in 6 million over budget in the current year because of personnel costs. That you hired $6 million more worth of people than you were expecting, or am I missing something?
You missed.
Overtime? Is that-
No.
No, okay. Yeah, can you elaborate? All gonna be raises? Is it a secret?
I suppose.
Okay. And then you also indicated that in your anticipatory budget, you're dropping back to the levels that didn't include the 6 million. So are you planning on firing a bunch of folks?
Oh, Jesus, y'all be asking me questions like I'm the commissioner or something.
You as in shit, not you as in you personally.
So I'll repeat talking points that I've already heard, which are that we are right sizing.
For buzzwording.
We are right sizing and correcting stuff and people and things and restructuring. We're restructuring.
Okay.
And Terry said, okay. Yeah, we're restructuring.
We can just stick with it's a secret.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you fixing up. Y'all fixing up
We
things.
fixing up, that's right.
Y'all fixing up things.
I just
Fixing
want
up
to
things.
it's not as hard as Jim's question.
Thank you. Ah,
No, but, how if you budgeted 27 million, what happened? Is it just the overall economy and the cost of everything?
no, so the city did a compensation study. And the personnel costs increased relevant to the compensation study. And I think there were other factors as well that I don't know that the compensation study represented the $6 million difference. I think that there are other factors that may have had something to do with that as well.
But y'all did get big raises then.
Who's y'all? Who?
It's fine.
Not everyone.
Some people got salary adjustments because they were definitely under market. But I don't know of anybody that got.
Leah, did you get one? You should have got one.
I got a 2% adjustment, the cost of living that everybody.
Okay, good.
Everybody got a 2% adjustment, and then some people in different grades
Okay,
got more significant adjustment.
okay.
I got 2%.
That's good.
Or either 2 or 2.5, something like that. So much so that I don't even know what it was. It was either 2 or 2.5.
It wasn't enough.
I didn't say that.
I said.
Is there a schedule published of when the departments will be doing the presentations
Yes.
for the budget?
Yes. I can send that to y'all.
Okay. Should check my email. And,
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the committee chairs, I couldn't remember which one, but somebody actually sent that out.
yes, I will read my email. And it's been this week, yes. And then, escaping, it landed kind of in my inbox as a bit of a byline. My city council person's newsletter, but it appears that the Department of Transportation has now committed to attending NPU sessions, NPU meetings, but upon request.
Yeah, that's not new. So that actually reminds me, I'm glad you said that. We'll be sending out an email either from me or somebody on the resource and support team to NPU chairs this week to ask for chairs to report to us, A, which departments are attending your meetings, and B, whether they're attending regularly, sometimes or not at all, and then see whether you want them to attend. I've actually had conversations with your former chair about whether or not it serves your NPU very well to have that segment of the agenda. Some NPUs absolutely have no interest in having the long list of department representatives taking up space in their meetings, and others want everyone to come, like every single department in and out of the city. So we're trying to get a definitive document that tells us which MPUs, as of today at least, want what, and which MPU will receive what level of attention. But yes, transportation has a form that you complete, and when you complete the form, you send somebody out to address whatever you need.
And where is that?
The form, well, it's probably on the website, but I have it.
Can you share that?
Sure.
Does anybody know about that? Okay.
Well, the chairs do. So most of y'all are not, yeah, the chairs absolutely know about that because it was sent to the MPU chairs.
Ms.
Yeah, my
And
question,
chairs have to share stuff, by the way. FYI, same thing with the Invest Atlanta thing. That was sent to the chairs. The chairs have to share stuff. If you're a chair, please share stuff.
We sent it out.
Yes, y'all did. I get your newsletter, and it's always very important.
my question is about dissemination of information and who actually is doing it. I saw on the news a few weeks ago that the city was $20 million in the red. Then the weeks after that, they said 33 million. So people in my NPU ask questions, of course, that I can't answer. So tell them that, you know, they're gonna have to get that from the city, but hopefully, what you just disseminated is different from what the media is disseminating.
Uh-oh, what I said is,
You said something about, what, 6 million?
That's
the.
that's just my department.
Okay, but as far as the information that we're getting on the media, I think that it would serve us better if we got something from your office via email. So all of this won't come as a surprise, and we have some logical statements to make to our constituents if they're asking questions.
Heard. I would suggest that that is a recommendation that should be coming from APAB to the city of Atlanta. I think that rises above the level of me hearing feedback and sharing with the powers that be that somebody said ABC in a meeting. That should come from you.
That, as long as this, if we're disseminating information, we're disseminating what the city actually is saying. When you hear this stuff on the news, everybody's gonna add their 2-cent word to it. So, yeah, if it's a recommendation that needs to come from APAB, then I pass it on to the president.
There's, that's my section, we have the discussions about all of it. Mr. Hunter.
I was just gonna add to what Ms. Phillips was saying that, this week was the executive office's budget briefing. I recommend, it was gonna have my meeting last, it was one meeting if you're not gonna watch them all, which is the opening section. But I now recommend you watch the executive office as well, so 2, if you can't read just about a dozen of them. So what was said during that briefing was that there is not a deficit, and they manage a $12 billion city full of assets and different things, and that there were, that's what was said.
Oh, well, I'm gonna repeat that then.
Yes.
There is no deficit. Thank you.
Yes.
I didn't
And so,
finish watching.
just saying that if we were to send that up, they're gonna just repeat what was said in the meeting, not saying that we shouldn't, but if you wanna hear it from the mayor's, and it was the mayor, the COO, the chief of staff, as well as the chief policy officer, as well as the chief treasurer, all 5, that they covered that during the meeting just this week. If you want to, because they're probably gonna say the same exact thing you just said in that briefing.
Mr. Fessler, did you have anything?
I did not, but just wanted to provide information to, Ms. Phillips, that the $33 million number was what was projected back in December, and it was updated in February as they made adjustments in revenue projections for the came in, where they were thinking. So those were 2 different sets of data over months. Wasn't a quick sort of arbitrary change in stories of the city.
But whatever it is, the media should not be, disseminating information that is not because of what, we're getting. Make sure that the media is saying what's correct.
Well, in December, the city was saying it was 33 million. In February, they were saying it's 20, and now they say there is no deficit. So it's a timing thing, not a different sources providing different information. It's you have to continue following the story as the revenue and expenses come in.
It's still being written and communicated.
So if every city department ran over budget and we don't have a deficit, does that imply that revenue came in much higher than expectation?
There's that.
Okay, just
Money up there. So what's the answer to that question?
Yes, both revenue and expenses and projected budget last year.
Okay, so we brought in more money than we'd anticipated.
Yes.
Okay.
so then if departments are scaling back as DCP is, are we expecting revenue to decline in the next year?
No, the proposed budget is actually larger than the current budget that was adopted last year. So I guess that means that we are anticipating, the city is anticipating more revenue and therefore more spending. Proposed budget is out there for you all to see.
But more revenue and more spending than the overrun in the current year, not more revenue and more spending than the anticipated.
Next year's the World Cup.
Where the intended budget will end this year. And the budget that's being proposed for next year, there'll be more
Right,
than
than what was actually spent, not than what was anticipated. Which would seem to imply there's no reason to be cutting NPU University.
oh,
Sorry.
I mean, they have money somewhere.
Leave furlough, and then we'll go on to our next agenda item.
I just wanted to ask if this is, this discussion around budget and a recommendation that was placed on the floor, is this something that I think we have a budget, do we have a budget committee?
task force.
Task force? Will they bring us that information or just, well, no, let me be clear on what I'm asking. I think there's a committee, maybe it's a task force. I don't know if it's one of the committees that's regularly established that could bring us just regular information directly regarding the budget. Do we have that in place?
So, yes, and that's why I mentioned that that's part of our agenda, and we'll get next to that. We'll get to that next if we get to the next item, but you all want to discuss it now.
No, I want to make
A
sure,
little bit.
I just want to make sure that there's a space where it seems like it should be occurring on a regular basis, where we're receiving whatever information that's coming directly from the executive offices, so wherever that information comes from, just for continuity of communication, because it appears that's what's lacking.
So two things. We do have a policy committee and a quality of life committee that has been working together, created a budget task force. With that being said, anything that they're purveying to you is a summation of public information that is out there. So they're watching budget briefings, reading documents that are public information. There is the website, I always get it backwards, is it Atlanta Budget?
ATL.
ATLbudget.com
Or
.org, sorry, I had it all. That has all summaries, primers, et cetera, on the budget, and so they're getting together to summarize that for you all. But also that information is out there if you want to peruse that, because that is.
Okay. I believe, I know that the Quality of Life Committee is discussing budget stuff. I was just saying, for the sake of the agenda, that if we have that space where we actually discuss the specifics like regarding budget, as I think I hear you're saying, if we can get there, there's a space for this conversation. And then the continuity of getting that information, we can get it in that space setting of the agenda. Is that right?
I'm not quite sure if I understand.
I just want to make sure if we're talking about the budget, and the budget is always going to be talked about, and it appeared that someone was saying, let's make a recommendation that we receive the current information from what's being discussed in the executive offices or what have you, wherever that information is. If we are here as the representatives, that we're receiving it, that we're discussing it, and therefore that's where the continuity is occurring. Like we're showing up, we're getting a monthly budget meeting, this is where we are, so that we can keep up with what is being said, what is being implied, and what is being misconstrued. Like just on a regular basis, we're talking about quality. I mean, if we're talking about the budget, then the quality of life is gonna be the people that, hey, when we get to be on the agenda, this is where this is going to be discussed.
So yes, that's what I said initially, is that that's part of a committee report. We are in May, the budget will be approved in June. And one of the things that you'll hear from the policy committee is actually about the community engagement, the primers, and what steps need to be taken for next fiscal year to make sure that there's expanded community engagement. So with that being said, can we move on to the next agenda item? Right. The governance meeting report or governance working group report is in your packet. The biggest thing that we discuss right now is that we are still working on recruiting and vetting an appointee for both the ethics committee and the office of the inspector general. Again, as you will see recommendations or have recommendations sent my way, I've gotten a couple so far. And the plan is to have someone here in June so that we can go through the through our vetting process and discussion process with that person or people. We coming out of governance, we also have a bylaws subcommittee that is myself, Mr. Sears, and Ms. Leaf. I actually emailed you all the bylaws amendments. We're not going to do a first read right now since I couldn't print them. We'll do a first read next month. But you have those amendments in your email that you can review, and please provide any feedback by Monday, June the 2nd. A lot of it is just some very simple grammatical changes, clarification of words. There are a couple of substantive items as far as like moving items from place to place. So for instance, employees of the city of Atlanta may serve as voting members of the board. It was under the voting article instead of the membership article. So we made some changes there. And there's nothing else that's too substantiative. We are considering a couple of changes, and we'll bring those to you that are a little bit different. As we further, we're still looking at that, and we'll offer those in our next meeting during the first read. But just take a look at it, scrolling through that to make sure that I'm not missing anything that's huge. One of the things we did change that was that right now it says those regular meetings will be published at least 3 days in advance of our meetings. We changed that to 7 days so that it could be in alignment with our recommendations to the city and public entities. And otherwise, the rest of it is some readability changes. So again, if you have any changes or feedback, please email those to me at apabatlanta@gmail.com by Monday, June the 2nd. Any questions for that part of the governance committee?
Quick question. So this came out of the April meeting or this came out of
So we had a 2 meetings in April. We couldn't change their date from the first Thursday to the last Thursday. So we ended up meeting on April 3rd and April 24th. The governance committee.
We get a charge for sheet people not national.
Would like that.
Hey, shout out.
And then our bylaws can be met twice, so. That's in your email, and you'll have until June 22nd to submit any feedback, and we'll do it those 3 minutes. Any other questions? So again, recommendations for OIG and ethics, please send those forward. We are still working on the Google Workspace, or we're not. DCP is in procurement, correct? Okay. And Kyle is still working on access to our website and domain so that we can get that all online. All right, so we can move on to
Yeah. Thank you everyone for your feedback on the logos. Most people like the one with the city line, but we're just waiting for, Kyle, I think you wanted one more feedback you're gonna send. You made a very good point that we're trying to focus on our name and our branding instead of maybe an image. So we might be back to the drawing board to get more of an image so people can really resonate with that image and know who we are. So we're gonna do that. And then second thing, funding. I know we're working on that behind the scenes. And that's all we have for right now until we get the website and all that other stuff. We can be a little more full force with getting the message out. And then the last thing I think we're gonna work on is a template for an APAB report for NPUT meetings.
not all MPUs.
No,
Just for NPUT.
no, I'm sorry, all MPs, I always say T because that's right, for all MPUs. So you can share with your organizations about what APAB does, kind of their mission, so they kind of have an understanding and how to report the best and most efficient, accurate news to your community. So look for that.
We do a recap from DCP every month. So just a reminder of that anytime you get the email from Leah after our meetings, the recap is included in that you can read off at your meetings.
Perfect.
All right. Policy committee.
Policy committee met virtually, so it's working group back on May 8th. A copy of our report is in your packet. We had 2 items that came out of the body last month that we discussed. The first was related to zoning restrictions related to alcohol licensing. This came up when Terry Ross was presenting his citizens review board, CRB, not CRB, LRB, license review board report. So we did discuss it, but since it was very sort of loosely described here, we're still seeking information. If you have any examples of alcohol license applications and the zoning regulations in your EU that you feel have not been enforced or reviewed during the course of the alcohol licensing process, please let us know. We are also checking in on the zoning rewrite and how alcohol licensing issues or distance requirements, other sort of regulations would be applicable or being incorporated into that zoning rewrite. And then also checking with the Atlanta Police Department, because what they list as their process online is not the process they appear to actually be following. And then there are proposed changes from the Alcohol Technical Advisory Group that are coming through as well. So wanting to understand what is already advised by them rather than coming with a brand new recommendation, we can just be supportive of proposed changes that are working through that process. So that is that. If there's any questions or comments, please let us know. Next up, we have a recommendation and a proposed paper on the extension of tax allocation districts, particularly related to the mayor's proposal to extend the Beltline tag. So we discussed it for much of the meeting and did not feel as a committee or working group comfortable either reaffirming the position from before or the new resolution. Instead, had a series of questions and comments or concerns. And our president relayed information that the Beltline TAD Advisory Committee, which we have multiple appointees to and multiple vacancies on, is meeting on the 27th. So instead, proposed a letter, which you will have a draft in your hand in print and is also in your inbox, to try to get us to them before their meeting. So
Letters is in this.
it's being passed around. If it didn't make it all the way around, I don't know how far it
I
got.
think it's last one, but,
It's been passed.
husband passed down.
No, Lisa passed it.
I didn't know.
No, it's about the thing that you,
Yeah, well, it's-
Lisa passed it down. She took one and passed it.
I didn't take one.
I didn't
have anything.
Oh my gosh.
We didn't get it.
Oh, there you go.
I was looking for it.
You passed it to me. I know it's something for me.
You now have.
I'm not crazy.
No, I guess it's all right. It's all right. I get it for me. That's what I was. Sorry.
So please take a look. There is if we were to get this to the TAD Act before their meeting on the 27th, we would need to act with some expediency. If there's not interest in that or consideration of the other resolution as previously drafted, that's fine. But just wanted to get this out and hopefully, if nothing else, it helps sort of share questions that we discussed and brought up in our committee working group session. So again, please review, and if there's anything, we'll proceed how the body sees fit on it. Next, in relationship to the CEP, as Director LaRue already spoke, we have been in correspondence with Nate Lozelle about the policy statements from the APUs. He had shared information with itself, which is not as up to date as what the director was able to share this morning. We'll continue to stay abreast of that information. And if there are any of your APUs that you know have not need assistance, the draft of the policy statements has currently provided to DCH on the atlantaforall.com website. We will, I think you can't click on your piece of paper, but in the email and the PDF, you can click on it and access that. So if your NPU wants to look at what some other NPUs have drafted, then please do that.
What was that site again?
Atlantaforall.com. But I'll circulate just that email here, or just that web address in that. I'm done talking. On the budget, we did discuss, as the president was alluding to before, the Dakota ordinances says that it's the policy of the city to coordinate recommendations for mayor planning this on the formulation of the city's budget, which is not something that there's a robust engagement process on. I imagine in a typical year, your NPU doesn't get any formal notification or request for priorities recommendations. To a certain degree, this ship may have already sailed on much of the engagement efforts for this year, but since it takes people and time and money to do engagement, the committee was interested in trying to find or allocate some money in this year's budget to allow for that process to take place. So Councilmember Amir Faruqi has done some participatory budgeting. This time on council, he is also leaving the council in July. So I reached out to him this past week to get some information on lessons learned, as well as cost he has incurred, whether or not they were actual contract costs or knowing his office members, staff members who took amount of time, just so we get some ballpark of what to ask for or what might be reasonable, or if it needs to start up as a smaller pilot project and sort of grow or whatever. So I'm still waiting to hear back from him, but we will be sure to share that information. We did discuss the appointments to the governing boards of the Nation's Office and the Office of the Attorney General. Then lastly, since we've already talked about the budget, this is a reminder, there is the Department of State Planning's presentation on the 20th. detailbudget.org does have information on it, and you can be updated with information. And there is an interactive public hearing on the 21st at 6:15 p.m. If folks registration here at City Hall. There's also an email address which is on here, which is budgettalk@atlantaga.gov. If you're interested in sending your questions in advance, or you can submit a 15-minute video. 15-second video, sorry. 15 seconds, that was maybe a Freudian slip there. 15-second video to be submitted as well. And we'll continue to take the quality of life committee on the historic preservation paper as well as on other stuff. So that's it for the committee report.
Mr. Martin, you have a question?
Yeah, well, it's two questions about this.
Yep.
The only source of information that I saw on the mayor's proposal was the AJC piece, which made no mention of affordable housing or a robust community process. What was your other source?
Both of those are mentioned in the AJC article, and I'll share.
Are they? Okay. Maybe I
I'm checking it again before.
Okay, but that was your source.
That the headline was just outlined, but the actual substance of the story does mention affordable housing, and there's a quote which is quoted here.
Yeah, I saw the quotation marks. That's why I was wondering.
Yep.
I didn't know the source.
Yep.
And then on the financial projections section, it says estimated revenue gains. Rather than gains, shouldn't that word be diversions or reallocations? Since, of course, TAD does not create revenue, it merely takes revenue from one place and puts it someplace else.
You could probably just strike the word gains in general,
Okay.
because it's about the money that will come through the extension after
Okay.
2030. If it doesn't,
Okay, the word gains, I think, is highly misleading, and that's how it looks.
I'll let him, but mental note of that.
Mr. Cheers?
Oh, no, I was asking, so are you trying to get this letter to TADAC by 27th?
Yes.
And do we need to vote on this today or in order to meet that deadline or?
It was probably easiest if we were to vote on it today, or at least to authorize the president to make the final adjustments and sort of send it whatever. But since we don't have a formal process for voting outside of meetings, it'd be advisable to make a motion and get it in your hands.
Okay.
Ms. Steins, Mr. Martin?
Yes, about the zoning restrictions to alcohol licensing.
Yep.
The Alcohol Technical Advisory Group, who are they and do they have any influence on application denial or just the process?
So they are a group that is in its third iteration that was convened by the city council, knowing that residents have challenges with the alcohol licensing process. The business owners have challenges with the process. The police have challenges with the process. They're trying to navigate all of that. So the most recent iteration, I believe that A. Stevenson was APAB's designee, but there were also designees from the alcohol industry, restaurants, that sort of stuff, from other constituent groups. They concluded their recommendations, I believe, in 2020, late 2023, early 2024. And then the group continues for the next year to try to implement the legislation. Alex Wan has been the chair of the group and has been introducing legislation, bit by bit, as he understands there's political appetite and so a good time issue working through beyond the recommendation with other city partners to make sure it's for this coming through. It's a very extensive list of recommendations, some very, very small, some very big. And some of them touch on some stuff related to what we're talking about, but knowing that we're also in the process of a zoning rewrite, and this question that came up at the last meeting was about zoning regulations that are in chapter 10, wanting to try to figure out, is there any overlap or synergy, or is the ball being dropped between the two? Because the expressed opinion of folks who were here, and what I've experienced some of my own view is the license review board, which Terry Ross sits on, and much of ATAC's focus has been about chapter 10 of the alcohol code, but we do have other things that deal with alcohol that I think all of us know full well because we're involved in the planning process, that sort of stuff. We fought to get something in the zoning, and then an application comes through, or there's a new business that shows up that doesn't seem to match. And where's the ball being dropped somewhere? Or is there some change in process, some change in policy needs to happen to make sure that we're all clear on what expectations are and what's
Thank you. So who's our rep now?
There is none. So APAC's last meeting was August of 2024.
Okay.
Kay Stevenson sent her final report September, and it was included in your meeting materials. So it may have been after, she might have sent it after the September meeting. So we were September, October.
Let's, Mrs. Kyle, I don't know whether to someone on this committee, can I make the motion to? Oh, okay, I wasn't sure. Madam President, I'd like to make the motion that, APAB, that's the, I guess it's a letter to the Beltline, tax allocation district in order that we can get this to them in time for the May 27th meeting.
Is there a second?
I would like to second that motion, but I would also like to ask a question during our discussion on the motion.
Right, it's been, moved and seconded. Any questions?
Mr.
Mr. Martin, any question? Mr. Martin had a question.
Do you have a question?
No, let me hear.
Oh, okay. So Kyle, you said there were aspects of our current position that some people were uncomfortable with, but you didn't say what those aspects were. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that so we can understand the motivation behind this. And then also, because that is our current position, I guess, you know, we have a position, we're sending this letter, but we're not proposing to change that position. So until further notice, I assume that our unanimously adopted position in 2018 is our position unless and until we do something different. Is that a reasonable interpretation or?
Other folks can opine on the, whether or not it's still our position. Officially, it's the last thing that they've had to set on the matter, right? It has not been repealed, and likewise has not been reaffirmed. So I can imagine that people can have a different opinion about, given the different makeup of this body and time that has passed, whether or not it is or not. But we're not affirmatively reaffirming it, and we're not outright striking or denying its existence either, right?
So yeah, I didn't want to subvert the will of the body by quoting it. Then again, I think until something else happens, it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, at least in the historical document, it is what APAB's position was in 2018, and it has not been withdrawn, right? So the discussion was one that previous resolution was about no extension of any tax allocation. And the premise of this is that there's state law that says you cannot create a new tag if more than 10% of your existing tax base is within the combination of all of the tags. And currently we are beyond that number. I think currently we're somewhere around 14%, 7 of which
18.
I don't think it's quite that high because that annexation has now been withdrawn. There's some other stuff that's.
The annexation hasn't actually ended yet.
Yes, it has.
It has ended
earlier this year. Okay. So regardless, we're well over the 10% threshold. The Beltline had is the majority of that funding. And there was not enough information. The folks that were in the conversation, if you were there, please feel to chime as well. But we didn't have all the facts and figures to understand the ending dates of all the tags and whether or not, if we reaffirm that position universally, if that might compromise a tag that people thought wanted or needed to be extended and isn't at a close to the 10% threshold. You know, some tags are, less than 0.5% of the tax amount. There was also concern from some folks that although the Beltline to a certain degree hasn't been a huge financial success, that success has not been spread equitably across the city. If there were certain portions of the Beltline had that still needed money to investment and development to flow to them. And that by having a universal, we don't support any extension of any sort of tag in any circumstances, then that was a bit too broad a stroke. So what this set of questions is trying to get at least in part, is give us some more details beyond just a press interview about what specific projects, what's the timeline, how much money this is going to be, how is this going to impact the school system, how is it going to impact Fulton County. Do things need to be renegotiated? Does there need to be a new redevelopment plan? Do there need to be more engagement processes? All of that. So none of it, I think, is to say that we might not reaffirm the earlier position, but at least until we get some questions answered, it seems like we don't know enough to be able to firmly 100% say yes or hell no, no tag extension, or any tag extension. And from the first evening. There was also some discussion brought up related to the politics of it and whether or not such a hardline stance would see folks turn away from APAB as a reasonable group of people to discuss, or whether or not presenting some things that could at least further the conversation and not necessarily get concessions, but get some discussion on the table to figure out sort of where the challenges are. Because there might be some solution that is, yes, there's no full-scale beltline extension, but there could be certain components of it, or it could be resetting the baseline so that it's not 10%, right? That it's a much, much smaller percent. We're starting at a brand new number in 2030 going on, rather than continuing on for the 2005 number in perpetuity of the extension.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yeah, I thought the motion and what you stated earlier was in order to meet the May 27th meeting of TADAC, that we also give some room, that's the first I've seen of this draft, for the chair to be able to unilaterally modify, add additional questions. Did I not hear that earlier?
No.
I know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
When you said that it would be helpful to have a motion to authorize the president to send the letter, even if there needed to be some slight.
Yes.
That's what she said.
Yes, so like,
Yes.
if folks are 100% good with all our language here, or we want to make a change or moving the word games, whatever, that's fine. If we're not quite there yet, I think we're still have the power to authorize the chair to, continue to refine whatever else in advance of the 27th meeting. But it just depends on exactly what the motion is. If the motion is no, we just want to send this letter, then that's what the motion is.
Okay, well then that means, and if you're amenable to that motion. Yeah, to that additional modification that we are saying once the chair receives it, if there are some corrections and or additions that we are proving it kind of on good faith, so to speak.
Next time, second.
Yes.
I mean, it is just a request for information. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless it turns into a push poll, I don't see how we possibly do it.
Right. She's gonna remove the word gains, who else knows when she does a closer inspection, what she may feel is.
I think we can trust it.
Y'all know I make those such Mr. Martin, do you accept that amendment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool, yeah.
Mr. Hunter and then Mr. Bryant.
So, this letter, seeks a lot of information about if you extended and what could be potentially, do with that area. But I don't see, at least, nothing that jumps out to me that says, if you extend these pads, what could be the potential impact of other areas that are not in the tab? And so what does that mean? What opportunities? Because, it was created, there was a timeline, it's not a short timeline. Is it not 30 years? 25 years? And so extending it, what are the unintended consequences? The other areas outside this tab? Clearly development has changed in the last, would be 25 years. The patterns, it has shifted. But if we extend, that means whatever that shift is, if those areas are not included currently, they will still continue to be left out.
So there's not a question about that.
But I would like that. That's what I'm saying.
I would be interested in what your question is and how that is necessarily posed through the TAD Act to get to the administration. But just want to point out that in the second paragraph, there's an understanding that there are other pressing public needs. Because yeah, it's undeniable that there are other things that need to be funded outside the boundaries of the TAD and the Beltline project. But I don't necessarily know that that is,
So how about this? In the interest of time, how about send your specific question, but part of the point of this is to get the information so that we can help determine that impact or find out from subject matter.
When we get to
the
the
information.
point, we have to acknowledge that we're asking an organization a question that is in their best interest to extend. One can easily think.
We're asking TAD,
Yes.
which is voluntary body. ABI has huge vested interest.
They're an advisory group to ADI. So they have a best interest, one could assume easily in extending, and you're asking them, why should you extend? So,
That's
Right, the way the form-
well, why should you be allowed to extend?
Right.
I mean, but that also is like, is that really a question for them? Should we not be sending a letter then to Investor Land, City Council, asking about their position? I mean, I just think that this is just playing into this is not how you go about it. They didn't create themselves.
Right.
I mean, that we have 4 appointees to that board. We need to express to them what our concerns are. They have a meeting with Bill Johnson coming up about the TAD. And so our request is that they ask these questions and get this information. That doesn't preclude us from sending a letter to the administration or Investor Manna. This is a step, not the step. So with that, if you have any language that you want to include stronger language about the fact, about the other impacts. I'm sorry, what's that?
Too much this. I hear you. I thought you're trying to move on to the next. I think that from this initial presentation, we're not expressing concerns. We don't know enough, it appears, to express concerns. And I feel like we're even asking the wrong body. What should we be concerned about? I think that we're off base completely with this.
So I'm not rushing, but this is not a committee meeting. This is our board meeting. This is very important.
We have
That's
a
why.
vote for the body, I'm
Yes.
discussing the vote.
So I'd like to be able to finish my statement. So they're meeting on May 27th. We have 4 appointees to this board. They need to know what our position is. Even if our position is we need more information, we know that there is an impact to other communities. That's why we're asking these questions. I don't want us to not be an uninformed body, so we have to ask someone. And we do need to ask Atlanta Beltline TADC because despite your comment, unilaterally, there is not sentiment along TADC to extend the TAD. Everyone there has their own opinions and has their own people that they represent. So with knowing that, we need to let them know what our position is or what our questions are. Since we have 12 appointees to that board, right now we have 5 people on hand. So we need to let them know that and get the information. This is a step, not the step, not the final step. We then take this information and then can help formulate what our position is going to be. And if it means that we're going to reaffirm 2018's resolution, fine. If we're going to change it, fine. But we need more information. We can't do that without asking questions. This is exploratory.
If I can respond to that.
What was that, Ms. Hawkins?
Will you call the question?
Oh,
No,
that's not how.
if I can finish responding to that. So if that is the case, I don't think this conveys a position, that's fine. So why are we not sending a letter to the Perry tag? The Perry Bolton tag? Why are we not sending a letter to the Camilton Road tag? I mean, they may not be equally used or tagged, they are still tagged nonetheless with boards, advisory, whatever. We're only addressing one tab in here. If we're seeking information, why are we not sending letters to all of them?
That's a valid question, and if that's what you would like to happen, we can do that after we get through this motion.
I never heard of it. I said, we're spending the one that's being sent into the deadline, but in everything that I've seen, it just says, we're talking about TAD extension. I'm gonna say this one and not that one.
So
I've not read that in the article.
in the mayor's.
On the floor,
We're in discussion as well.
but there's nothing to be applicable to the specific motion that is on the floor.
I'm discussing the ability of sending a letter to one tab, but there are others that are open.
And that's what I just said, you can vote up or down this motion, and if you would like to send letters to the other entities, you can do that after this motion. Mr. Martin?
Oh, I was gonna say, I think your concern about us rushing is misplaced. I'm deeply concerned about us dragging our feet on this. That we're now in an election year, and I think our elected officials would like nothing better than to keep this out of the public conversation until after November. And the longer we do absolutely nothing about it, the more we're going to accommodate that.
I don't see what this is doing about it.
Because
I agree it's not doing much, but doing nothing would be worse.
it's doing something, we could add the other tax. No, that doesn't negate your position on considering adding the other tax. The other tax, I mean, it doesn't negate it at all. I think what you're saying is let's focus on.
Okay, so point of order, we have a motion on the floor. We'll take the vote.
I need to, the motion restated.
Yep, so Ms. Phillips, just to confirm, the motion was for, the president of APAB to send, authorize the president of APAB to send this, Beltline tax allocation district, I'm sorry, the questions regarding the proposed extension of the Beltline TAD to the Beltline TAD. Right. With the ability to amend, make minor adjustments as needed.
Are those the words for the motion?
Hmm.
I mean, the words. Because I already got that. I need the words for
The motion is to authorize the president of APAB to send, a exploratory letter to Beltline TAD.
as drafted or with amendments or what?
Amendments as needed.
Okay.
Ms. Steins,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Hold 1 second. Please.
Are we ready? Yeah, I didn't know. Yes, it seemed like she was waiting for something.
I
Vote.
I am, what she said, yeah. No.
Ms.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Thurman,
Yes.
Mr. Sears,
Yes.
Ms. Baloo,
Yes.
Ms. Lee Furlong,
Yes.
Mr. Barnett,
Yes.
Mr. Hunter,
Okay.
Mr. Kessler,
Yes.
Mr. Penny,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins Lane, abstain. All right, the motion passes 13 yeas, 1 nay.
12 yeas, 1 nay, 1 abstention.
And we're making sure that those who are appointed in the sidebar also receive it.
Abstain. All right, anything else from the policy committee?
No.
Quality of life.
Good morning, everyone. Policy of life, we had a report that was sent separately. I apologize, given that my report late. I was attending a funeral from a family member, but nonetheless, there's the report with some minor adjustments. So in terms of the completed items at the top, we're still working through the historic preservation. This is not the right. Okay. Oh, doesn't want to- Sorry, let me get the right report there. All right, here we go. So from our meeting, in terms of the budget prep conversation, we did identify 2 members who will be on that task force. Mr. Martin and Mr. Thurman have graciously volunteered to be a part of that task force, as well as Ms. Steve Lee Furlow, as well as Ms. Rita Harden have agreed to also tag along because they are really interested in being part of that task force. Although the members officially will be the first 2 that were just aforementioned. Our old business that we are currently trying to button up would be the historic preservation paper. I need to give it to Sky to finish that off and to get that completed. I just emailed you all 2 documents for the definition of family. That's information purposes only. We're not asking for any action, but it is a start to engage in a conversation. We'll be discussing that during our next meeting. As part of the zoning 2.0 rewrite, we are looking at the definition of family for single family households, as well as there is an attachment that accompanies that describing and potentially trying to figure out how we can enforce the rooming house portion of the ordinance as well. So those two things are companions. Feel free to send us comments up until our next meeting, or feel free to attend our next working group to discuss those things. And we know that those things are popping up all across the city of Atlanta in many neighborhoods. Our new business, we will be inviting the 4 members of the ACRB to our next committee, our next working group session to and talk about the 2 points that came up at our last meeting, which is enhanced public access as well as strengthening the board. As part of this, I've sent out links to budget links from the city of Atlanta to atlbudget.org that are various links that I think that are very helpful. This includes the schedule as well as the YouTube link. I think is on here. If not, I will include that where you can go watch the meetings that have happened in the past or are going to happen. I recommend if you only have limited time, so only do so much in our meetings, to watch the first one, which was the fiscal condition of the city. It was a very good overview of the budget. And then the other one that I would recommend that you should, even though it's for one office, which is the offices, they also went a little more in detail, which I think accompanies that other piece as well. If you only have enough for 2, because it is each department. The way the schedule starts, fiscal condition of the city, the unions, and then they start going to the departments. Usually with public safety first. Public safety is one, Department of Law, corrections, and other various departments. City planning will be presenting next week as Director LaRue has shared with us. And that is everything that I have for information purposes, only no action from the committee. But please, please, please read those 2 position papers, give us your comments, tear it up, thumbs up it if you will agree with it. Send us feedback and feel free to attend our next working group session.
So that's why we can have links to all of these committee meetings. Are they published somewhere or just?
They're on the back of the agenda.
Back of the agenda. Do you have links on? The links. The link to the meeting.
Yeah, but you could also receive the calendar, you sent out the calendar invite to everyone.
It's to the committee. What I'll do is I will add everyone right now as a if you're not on the committee, I'll add you as a what do you call it? Option.
And all of you, things that, but it's government policy, and I mean, we are able to.
Yes. Yes.
I got all this. They're not actually dating, working.
They're required by what APAB agreed to.
Right.
APAB agreed to.
We internally require them to be right meetings, but they're not inherent.
Yeah, you'll get for me. Yes, everyone should have a link to all of the committee meetings. That's all APAB members have the opportunity to participate. It's just only assigned members or voting members. Mr. Hunter, you have him next to Mr. Martin and Mr. Thurman. Does that mean, what does that?
Those are the members of that task force.
Gotcha.
And the other 2, please include them. They want to attend, learn, and soak up everything as well.
So follow-up question to that, the name to this, Mr. Fessler, did you choose your 2 folks from policy committee?
We did not, yeah. On that, sunny ones here.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any questions from Mr. Hunter? Anything else for you?
We do prepare, we do intend on at least rewrite something next month about the definition of family and room and houses. So please, we want your feedback.
Okay, moving on. Do we have any new items for consideration? Mr. Hunter, you said you were thinking about, you wanted us to draft letters for other entities?
Yes, I mean, I think that if we're going to, those other tabs, okay, yes, I think that we should also draft similar language to the other, tabs to get their information. And the reason is that if we're going to extend one, right, there may be conversations about extending others have been extended, if I'm not mistaken, in the past.
The West Side tab is extended, and I believe Atlantic Station tab is extended, which is why I wonder if what you said is correct. It should have been.
Oh, no, it definitely ended.
Because they were projecting that they weren't going to retire all the debt this year and they were going to extend it a couple of years. And that was part of the IGA when they did the Gulch deal.
It ended, and I will give you confirmation.
Okay.
I asked that question explicitly, and
I mean, they certainly authorized an extension of the Atlantic Station tab, even if they didn't actually extend it.
Yeah.
So yes, they tried to extend the West Side tab a second time during the Gulch deal. But the thing I would be concerned about trying to communicate with other TADs is I don't think every TAD has a functioning advisory committee. I think that the Perry Bolton TAD advisory committee is imaginary. So there's really no one to communicate with.
So we can attempt, but I think that the original position paper that you drafted was giving a general rule in terms of what should be the policy or not. And I think that we're kind of going to specific now with this previously group, which is talking about one, but I think the original idea was what should be the general rule. Of course, you can have exceptions to the rule, or you can choose to treat something different than your general rule. But the intent of the original paper that Mr. White worked on was about what is our position in general about that.
To provide clarity, that is the whole point of this, is that because that language was blanket, that's why we had questions, because for the very same reason that you stated, that there is impact on other communities. What if they need a TAD? Like, what if we need to build a new TAD? Like, whatever, if we need to extend one. And so that is why we're asking these questions, to get information on what will happen if this is extended and what that impact will be on other TADs, and whether or not we want our language to say all TADs, or if it needs to be, if that needs to be modified. If we still want no extensions on any TADs at all, fine. But if we find that that is going to negatively impact other areas, then we need to change the language.
I guess also too, we talked about in the past, when we had a presentation, I believe it was last year, from Dr. I was going to say Clementich. When we asked about, for example, the Kempton Road tag, I'm biased, I live around that corridor. And, I said then, not all tags are treated equal. That tag has been working for quite some time. I think it was created around the same time as the line tag.
I think the corridor tags were created in that weird limbo period between the creation of the Beltline tag and the resolution of the litigation around the Beltline tag. So between 05 and 08.
And so in terms of what the Beltline has done and what Kempton Road has not done, it all around the same time. It goes back to what I said a year or so ago, that not all tags are treated equally. And so that's in terms of the, so now you're asking about tags. And you also know that we don't use tags in the same functions. The one in Kempton Road has been described as a pay-as-you-go tag. The Beltline is certainly not that. And so I think that I don't want to seem like I don't want us to just do one approach. I want to make sure that we're touching on the population so we get all the information. So we can then make an informed decision, and we're not going to say, okay, I learned about this, now you go over here, and then before you know it, things already passed. I mean, there was, I'm leaving.
I'll say that you're repeating exactly what I just said, and then you said we were rushing it. Well, we're not rushing it, but we need to be, we need to move quickly in the sense of getting the information so that we don't miss out on being able to make a true, another recommendation or a firmer recommendation. So you're really just saying all the things that we just said. So your new business is
a letter, because I don't think it covers enough of asking that entity, what are the unintended consequences that we remain open to the rest of the city?
Well, I'll ask you to then send me some language if you want to expound on that we can include in the letter. And so your new items for consideration is to draft similar letters for the other TAD agencies or advisory committees. Yes?
You want the party like to do that?
if you want to, yes, you can. But I was just gonna put some.
They should do it since they drafted the person.
No, I wasn't
So we
being
must have looked
like, you said it was a new. You're putting up a new item for consideration, so I'm just repeating it, what you've said so far. So, is that correct?
Yes.
Ms. Lee Furlow?
If we move from that, I just wanted to, the board appointments that we have listed here, I noticed that some of the, terms have either expired and or some of the individuals are no longer here. And is that something that is this current, or is this something that, is this a new item, on our board appointments?
It is current, and it's not true that some of them are not here.
It is not true.
It is true that some of their terms have expired,
Okay,
but all of these people are active appointees.
okay. So even if they're,
For which meant not here?
I meant even, my understanding is that the board appointments, these are the members of the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board.
No.
They are not, they're there.
They're
Okay.
appointed by the
They're
Atlanta
appointed?
Planning Advisory
Okay.
Board. The board makes appointments to these boards,
Uh-huh.
authorities, and commissions. And the board has appointed the people named in that second column to serve in
This,
boards of the first column.
and so these are not the members of this particular board.
Correct.
Do not have to be. Okay, that point of clarity helps.
And yes, I know that Mr. Morris and Mr. Reinwald are expired. That's been on my list for a couple of months. We're confirming whether or not they still want to participate, and then we'll move forward
Okay.
with getting approval.
So real quick, this might be one-on-one. This draft we see is pursuant to a request to extend the belt line by someone or some entity, or just language believing that monies are needed to be allocated based on. What is?
The mayor, there was there are two, there was an AJC article put in the mayor of Atlanta saying that he would like the belt line tab to be extended. And it was also, I think, announced during a public meeting as well.
Okay, so that is the genesis of this, where we are. So in that, this comes pursuant to something the mayor said, it seems like an additional work for you for something that is premature at this point to reach out to all these other folks saying, don't you want some money too?
We can talk about that. That's right.
Yeah, I just wanted to address something that Rasheen said about the other TADs, and Campbell Road TAD being an example, that it really is all about the Beltline TAD in terms of our position, because if the Beltline TAD is allowed to expire on schedule in 2030, that will drop us under the 10% threshold. And so if someone wanted to extend the Campbell Road TAD, or expand the Campbell Road TAD, or create a new TAD, all of those things would then be options on the table without deviating from the policy that we have already put forward. If, on the other hand, the Beltline TAD is extended, all of those things would be off the table with regard to the policy that we've already put forward. So I think no matter what perspective you look at it from, at least today, it's all about the Beltline.
Yes, yes.
I think that's what I think the committee itself, kind of surmised that in the end. And that's the reason why this letter was kind of drafted. We didn't know exactly where to kind of start because of that, because most of our conversations were, my MPU had several neighborhoods that were not included in any of the tags. And even though they were so close to some of those tags. So, and it's my understanding that a couple of my MPU neighborhoods also were initially included and then excluded when the legislation came up. So I think that the genesis of it, you're right, was the article, but the spirit that the committee wanted to convey with this letter was to say we need to start somewhere. And this was the biggest challenge that we were facing because of the other tasks weren't functioning because of this.
Yeah,
Mr. Tesla?
just one other comment too, related to the Beltline TAD. Its representation is not exclusive of folks that live or represent interests within the geography of the Beltline TAD. It is also citywide, like APAB and communities. And I know at least when Corinne Debt was up for nomination or appointment. That was something that she brought forth, that she was beyond the boundaries. And wanted to understand how the Beltline, for better or for worse, would impact her neighborhood. And since the body does exist, and since we do have appointments to it, I think it makes the most sense for us to be first engaging with them and their position or questions to them so that they can be the folks that are routinely doing these presentations and we never have this conversation. But yeah, it's not intended to be a, we can't also send conversation or communication to the mayor, to the owner of that line, have discussion on other tabs. But right now, there's only one that's been proposed for extension, that is in the condition for its extension would prohibit anything else from happening. And is the one that's on the table.
No, I was just checking.
Well, I'm working. This still had that keep it moving.
So I want to say that the original position was about developing a recreational plan or if taxes being extended. So what happens if we get them things back and say, okay, we extend the Beltline tab, but then we have nothing else we say, but no others. Like that's what's on.
That's not what the discussion is right now. I understand the question and it was debated in committee and the next policy committee meeting is sort of has Thursday, June the 12th, is that right? Well, it's not.
Specifically, the changes.
Yeah, what we did discuss, I think, maybe needing to change because of when this meeting falls and making sure our meetings are happening at least a week in advance, so we can write the report out, so. Right.
So 2 weeks and they could look like,
Yeah,
and
So with that being said, I understand the question. I would recommend attending the policy committee meeting, then or sending those questions to the committee chair so that they can discuss it. Those are things that, these are all valid points, but they were all discussed in the committee meeting. So if we still have concern with it, attend the committee meeting, let them know. Are there any other items for consideration? Any unfinished business? Announcements and upcoming meetings. The governance working group will meet via Zoom on Thursday, March 22nd at 6:30 p.m. The policy committee will meet on Thursday, June the 12th at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. And the quality of life committee will meet on Wednesday, June the 11th via Zoom at 6:30. There is, I don't know if you all received this, I will forward it to you. There is a climate resilient ATL hands-on visioning workshop on Tuesday, May 20th at 6 p.m. at the Little 5 Points Community Center. And it is to inform Atlanta's first community-led, data-driven climate resilience action plan rooted in equity and environmental justice. So, yay, another plan. So, comprehensive development plan, zoning 2.0, comprehensive transportation plan, which ATL DOT will be coming within the next month or so to come speak to us about that. Apparently now we have a climate resilience action plan, and I feel like I'm missing one. Oh, there's Trails ATL. They're finished with.
We've already voted on it.
We already voted, right?
Yeah, we voted.
Y'all had it, done it very soon.
So just being aware that these are all things that we're gonna have to review and look at and provide feedback on, as well as making sure the processes are good. But also really looking at moving forward, how these can stop being such siloed entities, because they're related. And I don't know, I just looking at like the comprehensive transportation plan, I've asked DOT, and I know we all have, Why is that not part of the development plan? Why isn't climate resilience part of the development plan? This seems like it's, that the segregation of these will be daunting on residents in order to keep up. So just putting it on your plate, if anyone can attend, that's great. If not, we get a lot of, I don't know if they'll be. Oh, there you are. Do you know if that climate resilience meeting will be reported?
Oh, I have no idea. No idea.
Right. Any other announcements or?
Just to add to that, that's the visioning session that you're talking about, the Little Park Conference. They will, after that, host, community, engagement sessions, in Northeast, Southeast, Southwest. So, those dates are listed also on the announcement, and the announcements were sent to the chairs. So if you're a chair, just remember to forward that to.
Yes, I appreciate that, DOT's coming. We know who the representative is coming, because in my experience, that they send people that are not very knowledgeable about everything, but can't answer the questions right on the spot.
Nobody should be expected to answer questions. No, without knowing in advance what questions are gonna be.
Right.
What subject.
Do we know what subject that we're talking to?
No.
The last two times that we had people attend was the commissioner, and then after that, it was the deputy commissioner. Strategy and mobility. Strategy and mobility, so they're very knowledgeable, so if you have questions in advance, send them. But remembering that this is a conversation about the comprehensive transportation plan and what that looks like, what the engagement will be, how they're gonna implement that engagement plan, and what the outcomes of the transportation plan are versus necessarily very detailed project specific questions.
Sounds like we've got questions asking.
No,
Not necessarily.
To her question, seems like they should know some minimal process, like how you get speakers, if there's a survey, there's this, that, the other, some minimal process. If you're coming into the forum, should be available. For example, sidewalks are being requested all the time. There's gotta be a study, there's a 30 days, there's a. Those are things that I want to ask adjourn. And if they have a question, anybody coming into the group, you should know. Is that correct?
correct, and the commissioner and the deputy commissioner are aware of those and have to answer those questions, but the point is that if it's really surge market specifics, this is not really what it's for. I'm sure that you can ask those questions if it's germane to how will this impact the project with versus I need speed bumps in my neighborhood. That's not what this conversation is about. Mr. Hunter?
The motto that was never resign plan, isn't that also gonna be available?
It's, they're still doing briefings. There was actually one today at the same time as this meeting. You can provide feedback until May 20th.
Another plan.
Another plan, yes. And this one is a direct impact to a lot of people. Anything else? All right. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, we're adjourned 12:10.
Woo-hoo. This meeting now, you guys are adjourned. Protest that we're doing at the gas station at 3397, Greenback Parkway. I'll be more than happy to give you guys, an update. You might have seen it on the news.
Yeah.
And yesterday we had a very good development. And that's like, she will make a lot of, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that said no, it's just that. Rather than we get a revenue, it's probably the folks that should be talking about. Let's get this information, they keep going if they're.
But I would, I guess, maybe I could check is the like. After they are able to go out, regardless of.
What? Well, I think. I think the intent as well is that it's.
Absolutely, yeah, let me take that. Unless we take retail.
I know.